All right, greetings everybody. Welcome to week 9. Wondering how everybody's feeling in this last little stretch of farm to table. And just want to say congratulations to everybody. We're rolling through strong. Week 8, cauliflower. I know some people felt like we were on cauliflower overload, but it is all about the versatility of seeing how we can take one product and really get all these different types of textures, flavor profiles, utilization, right? How do we cut a product so that we still have usable products on the other side when we want to get one cut, right? This will happen oftentimes, not just with animal butchery, but vegetable, butchery as well. Does anybody have any questions? I've so far seen some beautiful purees coming in, some great golden brown sears on the cauliflower steaks, and some nice golden brown development on your au gratins as well. Some great consistency for the bechamel. Or Mornay, which might have been some of y'all's first attempts and tries making that with having a name associated behind it. So let's hear from you. Did anybody have any questions, comments, or anything that they'd like to share regarding the cauliflower? Robert, let's hear from you.
Sure. With the cauliflower steak, is there any trick to flipping it over without, because it softens up and then the florets kind of fall off when you try to flip it? Is there like a tool or a special way you do it so it's a little more gentle?
Yeah, a few suggestions. One, I think that the 1/2 inch thick might be a little bit under. I think if you go for like a 3/4 or even an inch thick, it will, you won't have as much chance of those florets breaking off. Additionally, I think I pulled up remember I pulled up a few weeks ago that fish spatula that was really long and kind of flexible. That'll do a good trick. That'll help, as opposed to trying to use a tong, right? A tong applies pressure in a certain section, does make it a little bit more vulnerable to snapping. Tongs have that tendency to do that. So I would say a larger spatula and cutting that a bit thicker to maintain it. I think you'll have a better luck. Did you do the vertical cut or the horizontal cut?
I did the vertical and okay. I made them a little bit thicker, but they still kind of wanted to break off on me.
And I haven't graded yours yet, looked at it. So did you do the pan sear? Or maybe Chef Lee is on you, I don't know.
Yeah, she did mine. Yeah, she did mine, and I did the pan sear in a cast iron skillet, and it just, when I flipped it over, it was like I was slapping it back down on the pan, and it kind of felt like it was about to break apart.
Gotcha. Yeah, I would say that those would be my best tips, which is go a little bit thicker, and honestly, maybe pulling back a little bit on that cooking time. But I think that thickness will help, right? If the branches are not as cooked, they'll be less likely to snap. So that might help. But a larger spatula, that would be my best words of advice. What about you, Chef Lee?
I sometimes when I have something that's kind of precarious to flip, I'll use like a fish spatula is a great another utensil on top of it so I can very gingerly flip it over. Or sometimes I use my hand to do that. I'm not suggesting y'all do that. I have asbestos fingers. So, but yeah, if you use another utensil to kind of help turn it, that can be useful. You were talking about what you've seen, Chef Catherine. I have seen cauliflower press that was beautiful. I say beautiful for cauliflower. Anyway, just wanted to mention that.
Awesome. Yeah, I've seen the press as well, which looks fantastic. Happy for anybody who explored that.
Is there any way anybody could send a cauliflower press video? Because I did it, and I don't know if I did it right, but I mean, it tasted great. I think it looked great, but it was just totally brand new for me.
It is a new technique, right? You're making purees, you're adding a gelling agent. applying weighted pressure to solidify it. But we don't have a video of that one, unfortunately, but there is the one photo that's in the book, if you'd like that photo.
Yeah, 'cause I tried YouTube and everything. I couldn't find anything. I just saw like a different type of press. And you know, I did it. I did all four, and I was sick all week, and it was just a lot to deal with being sick. But it was really interesting and really neat. I just hope I did it right. You know, I haven't got my feedback, but I'm hoping I did okay. But I'm hoping like maybe I could find a video to just make sure to reassure myself that I was doing it correct.
Well, I'll be checking out your feedback later, your work later this evening, and I'll be able to give you feedback on it. I'm sure that you did. The most important aspect here is that it sets, right? So it's really about if you used agar-agar, or if you substituted with another gelatin or another gelling agent, how that solidified. If you solidify, that's the main goal, right? You want that to hold its shape. And then obviously you want it to taste good and look nice, but the holding together is the most important part.
Awesome. Well, be brute on me, so let me know.
Okay, will do, Hendy. All right, Roger, I see your hand up as well, and then we'll hop on to week 9.
Yeah, so when I was coring the cauliflower, right, I didn't core it all the way through. I left some on when I was cutting the steaks, and that seemed to help, because when I cut the first steak, it just sort of fell apart, kind of like, you know, the problem that Robert was having, right?
Well, yeah, you don't want to core the cauliflower when making the steak,
right?
because that'll take away that main root, like the trunk structure.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? That trunk
So
is
you leave the trunk structure, because you still have leaves. You just have to pick those leaves off, man. Just kind of.
You got
Gotcha.
it.
Okay.
You can use either a paring
Okay.
knife or snap off the leaves. And if you wanted, you can trim off a little bit of that, you know, like a 1/4 inch, really, unless
Right.
it's a gnarly bottom. You don't want to. You can just take that off. You know, and if you needed to, and it was really tough and fibrous on the outsides of it, you could even take a little peeler on that if you needed to. But you don't need to core it. It's totally edible, and that way that'll give you that main infrastructure, the trunk essentially, to give you the support that you need.
Okay. Yeah. See, I wasn't sure to what point it was edible or not, so I wasn't sure how far I could go without making someone sick.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is it's totally edible. It would only just be, how fibrous is it? You know.
Okay.
Which is like, it's same like who's ever worked with asparagus, right? And we're taught to snap off those ends, okay, or slice them off. That is so that end usually is extremely dry and more fibrous because it's the oldest. The shoot is the youngest, right? So the oldest is down here. That's the oldest, and it becomes tough. It doesn't break down. It's just long and not as pleasant, but you won't make anybody sick. I've eaten plenty of bottoms of vegetables in my day, and
Okay. Thank you.
just a little extra fiber.
I had too much, but that was okay.
Okay, yeah. Well, you're clearly not that much, Roger, if you're making another batch of cauliflower soup, so it must be all right.
Well, oh no, it was delicious. I never liked cauliflower.
Yeah,
And this
now.
cauliflower was delicious. And when my mom found out, she's like, I have to come over and have some.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it goes back to, you know, something that we've been talking about, the preparation, how something is prepared, how it's cared for, how is it processed leading up into the final dish, right? Mushrooms can be pretty off-putting and slimy, okay? Unless somebody knows how to cook those correctly. Get that nice brown sear on them. What about okra? Okra also, remember, we also have a lot of us have textural issues, right? I know that people were thinking that, same with the liver. I mean, we could touch base on this on so many different components that we've executed, right? Texture is a huge thing. Food memories are a huge thing, right? There's a reason why we remember people, places, events because of food, is because it's connected to all these senses, okay? and that also goes whether it's chicken livers for Chef Lee or cauliflower. You know, there are things that people are just not into. I've got an issue with rice pudding. Rice, you know, it's a textural thing for me, but I love polenta. I love risotto. But hot oatmeal and rice pudding, I just, it's a thing for me. So like we all have that, and maybe somebody changes your mind. Maybe you have a congee or a really great rice pudding that says, you know what, I'm going to keep my mind open to this. And that's really what it's about being a chef. Constantly keeping your eyes and mouth open, okay, to try new things. And if you don't like it, well, try it again. And keep trying. At least know how it should be prepared.
Right.
So glad that you guys are, some of you at least, cauliflower converts, and liver pate converts as well. And let's see if we can have some cool, no, Robert, we got Robert's no for the liver, I'm guessing. Well, that's okay. Maybe something else will turn you into liver of some sort. But all right, class. So let's talk a little bit about what we've got on the table for this week, which is preservation. Before we pull up the recipes, I want to just ask you all, let's have a conversation about this. What are ways and things that we eat that are preserved?
Well, we've already done one, and that was the gravlax.
Yes, in CU132. What type of preservation is that?
That was what, salt.
What's the name of the technique?
Oh, but I'm horrible at this. My brain always
Saved by the
loses it.
Zoom cutout. Can you all see me, or am I gone?
You're frozen.
On my screen, you're gone.
I think Roblox is curing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Curing. There you go. Robert, you always can remember the words. I can never remember the words.
While Chef C is working on getting back to us, do you guys want to, I've got lots of good things coming in here through the chat here. We've got pickles, jams, anything pickled, banana peppers. And I guess it depends on too, like what part of the country you live in and what's kind of traditional to pickle. When I was a kid, my neighbor made watermelon rind pickles, which sounds bizarre, but they were delicious. So how did, what about you guys? Does anybody have a comment on what's kind of traditional to the area where you grew up or where you live? We've got Roger saying German pickles, a lot of different veggies. Yep. In Italy, there's the, what do you call it? I'm at a loss for the word. Starts with a G. Anybody help me out? You see it a lot, like it's just on the table at Italian restaurants, pickled cauliflower and carrots, and sometimes there's some olives in there with it.
Giardiniera.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Pickled green beans. Yes, we have pickled okra. That's a popular thing here in the South. You'll see it on the charcuterie board sometimes, or people put them in their Bloody Marys. So lots of options with that for sure. Pickled green beans. You're in Pennsylvania, right, Melinda? That's what you're seeing up there. Hang on one second. Okay. We'll just give her a few minutes to Let me send her a message and see. She's asking if everyone got booted. Did y'all notice anybody else getting booted out when she disappeared?
I thought there were 18 participants listed earlier, but there's only 16 now, so maybe a couple people.
Hey, might have happened to some others.
Oh, there's 17. Yeah, we're coming back up.
She's logging back in, so again, I think this is heavy internet traffic causing these complications. Pickled Virginia ham. Not pickled Virginia ham, just cured ham. Is that what you're talking about, Robert?
Yeah, just the cured Virginia ham that sits in there for maybe 2 years at sometimes.
Yeah, I guess it's the South version of prosciutto or speck or something like that. I'm looking at can't get fresh okra, Mary, up in New England. Is that right? Smoked fish and meat. Houston pickles pig feet, pickled pig's feet. That's something I've never had. I would try them. I just have never had an opportunity before. Beets, preserves, cured ham, pickled eggs. Who's had a pickled egg? Anyone? All right, I'm gonna check with Chef C again. Let's see. Did any of you have trouble logging on tonight, like we have the last couple of weeks? You did.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Okay. Just good to be able to give feedback. Do you guys, I mean, there's so many different kinds of pickles you can make, right? Different flavor profiles. If you guys want to put in the chat what you prefer pickle wise, I love half sours. Those are my favorite. We've got garlic, dill, spicy. Robert, I'm not Robert. Roger, will you tell the class what a German pickle is?
So it's kind of hard to describe the taste. It's almost like a sweet and sour sort of pickle. It's not like a dill pickle or your sweet pickles or anything like we make here. It's they have a whole lot more herbs in it than I've seen. Actually, let me go grab the jar. Hold
Okay.
on.
I know that like the half sours, sometimes when I buy those, they'll have some dill or some peppercorns in the jar with them, or at the farmer's market. We have a huge international farmer's market that's right around the corner, so I can get all different kinds of things. And they sell quite a few of those half sour pickles. You asking if the German pickle is like a bread and butter pickle, Melinda?
No, nowhere near like bread and butter pickle. I don't know if y'all can see that, but you see all the spices it has in it.
Yeah.
And they're very crisp. They have a very crisp outside, and they pair. One of the things that I love to pair it with is actually liverwurst. But it pairs really good with cheeses and meats. You just slice it thin and you put that on like an open face sandwich or something. But it's a very unique taste, and most of my American friends that I have try them don't like them.
Yeah.
Because they're so used to the American pickles. It's almost like an acquired taste, I would say.
Has anyone, I know I saw a couple of assignments come in for this week. How's that going? Have you guys started on any of that? Decided what it is that you're going to prepare? No? Shaking of heads.
So someone was just asking about the ingredients. It's gherkins, water, spirit vinegar, which I'm not sure what spirit vinegar is. Glucose fructose syrup from wheat and corn, dill, onions, mustard seed, salt, sugar, and natural flavorings, and contains wheat.
Wonder if that's like a wine vinegar of some sort.
I'm gonna have to look that up.
Chef's Catherine's trying to come in on her phone. Robert, you got your hand raised.
Yeah, so my pickles are sitting in the fridge for that 24-hour period right now, but I did the strawberries preserve, and I followed the recipe to the T, and it's been in that fridge for a good 12 hours now, and it's
Yeah.
still a little soupy and runny.
Let
Is that
me.
normal?
Let
It's
me.
not like, it's not gelling.
It's not gelling. If you follow the
Yeah.
recipe to the T, I would say it's probably the consistency that they were going for. I'm trying to pull up the recipes on my phone, and now I'm having.
Okay, so no wonder the Germans love these pickles so much. Spirit vinegar is made from alcohol.
That's what I thought. Okay, sorry. I don't know what's going on with the internet. You know, it depends on the sugar to water ratio. Um, and, you know, I've made preserves or jams before that were definitely looser in consistency because they didn't have as much sugar. And then, you know, when you're working with apples, those have pectin in them, which is a kind of a, I don't know, it has a fibrous consistency to it, which is going to thicken anything that you make with apples. So I apologize. I am trying to get to this recipe so I can, here we go. Yes, you can share your screen. Thank you, Gregory. Well, actually, I don't think you can. You have to be a host.
I can't.
Hey, class.
Okay, there she is.
We'll see. Is everybody else having issues? Chef Lee, were you having issues accessing the site?
Yeah.
Yeah, same. I don't know what happened, but I'm actually logging in now through just via Zoom and not the class site. So once again, my apologies, class. Bear with us, really. I know this is not ideal. None of us want to be dealing with this. All right.
Okay.
Let's give this a go.
So,
thank you.
Robert was asking, he said the consistency of his preserves is still a little loose after, 12 hours in the fridge? And he followed the recipe to the T.
Yeah.
So I was trying to.
Yeah, all the measurements, I'm sorry. Yeah, all their measurements are right on, and it's been in the fridge for about 12 hours, and it's still very soupy. It's not gelling like a spreadable. It's more of like something like a.
Okay, quick question. Did you reduce it long enough?
Well, I reduced it to the point where the strawberries were just becoming mush.
Okay, that's good.
And then about another 3 or 4 minutes of time with the pectin in there, the heat.
Huh. I mean, and then we just saw another comment from, I think it was Mary. Yeah, that super thick preserves, right? So I have seen this in the past. And it could be water content. It could be the brand of pectin that you utilized. But it should firm up. I mean, if you measure the pectin correctly, it really should work. Chef Lee, did you have any other thoughts on that?
No, that was what, I mean, we're on the same page as far as what might have happened with that. Melinda just said she has all 4 recipes printed if we need them, if we can't pull up the class page information.
Awesome. Thank you. Did you all, because I was having obviously those tech issues, Chef, did you just start going through the assignments?
We were talking about the different things that people were making, or we followed up on your question about the gravlax being cured, and then we started talking about different things that are pickled in different parts of the country.
Okay, perfect.
In certain areas.
Okay.
And then I was trying to pull up that recipe to answer Roger's question. Robert, I keep getting Roger and Robert mixed up tonight. So I could look at the recipe and see if maybe I saw some situation where it would have consistency.
I'll see if I can pull this up, but I do want to keep on talking, if you guys don't mind. I want to cut back into the whole preservation. So we've got curing, pickling. Did you talk about what other types of preservation methods are there?
We did not.
Okay.
So that's a good starting point.
All right, let's hop back into it. So we've got curing, pickling, we've got dehydration. Yep. What else? Think about something that's preserved. What might you eat on a regular basis that's been preserved?
Well, smoking.
Yep, smoking is another one. Smoking and drying, okay. Jelly, so preservation, making preserves by the addition of adding sugar. All right, what else? Refrigeration, yeah, to some extent. Cold storage, it is a type, but what about more long-term, more shelf stable? Yep, freezing is another one. What else?
Canning.
Yeah. Canning, yep, canning is would be the next step. Dehydration falls under that. Yes, Mary, jerky. All right, so we've got curing, dehydrating, smoking, pickling, jamming, freezing, and there's just one other one out there that y'all haven't hit on yet. This is has been used through the ages. It adds probiotics and prebiotics into your diet. Some of these, fermentation, yes, exactly. Making beer, making wine, making kimchi, fermented products, right? Fermentation. Now we've got this huge list, okay, of all these ways that we can preserve food. And now we know that preservation of food means making it last longer than if it was in its current fresh state, right? That's what we want to do. We want to stretch out that life. What do we have to do to make sure that when we're doing this to fresh products, how do we make that safe? What are the important factors? What makes food spoil? What do all of these preservation techniques have? Okay, we've got bacteria. Yeah, bacteria is a huge one. How do we control bacteria? The growth of bacteria.
Sterilization.
What was that, Hendy?
Sterilization.
Chef, I couldn't hear her.
Sterilization.
Oh, sterilization. Yes, sterilization. Okay. Also, I think I saw it, somebody removing air and water, right? Acidity, changing how acidic, your pH. What else? This is a huge one. What kills bacteria or lets it thrive? Temperature, exactly. Okay, so now we're looking at these controls. These are control issues, okay, where we have the ability to control them. By adding acid, we stop the growth. By removing the oxygen, right, air, that bacteria can't grow. If we make it too hot or too cold, we slow that bacteria down. Okay, so it's all about controlling these external factors. That's how we preserve food. What does dehydration do? Or curing? What does it do? What does it remove?
Moisture.
Moisture, right? Because we know moisture, bacteria, water, that's where they're going to thrive. You need to pull out that moisture so the bacteria cannot grow. You do that by dehydrating or by adding salt. Okay? With pickling, what are we doing with pickling? What are we changing there? To make the adding acid, right? We want to make it an inhospitable. We don't want the bacteria to like where they're living, right? So that means we have to change their environment. Adding acid, right? Or in the other cases of heating or dehydrating, we're changing the heat, the temperature, or their moisture content, all right? And this is how we get we end up with safe products in the end, because we've eliminated the external environments that will allow bacteria to grow. And this is really important. So what does that mean? Hygiene, very important when we're dealing with preservation. Temperature control, very important. Having our ratios of our salt curing method. How long are we smoking? Are we dry smoking? Wet smoking, right? Dry curing, wet curing. What's one type of cured product that a lot of us use in every, for breakfast? Pretty famous. Bacon, yeah,
Sausage.
exactly. Bacon, right? Cured and oftentimes smoked. So you can have two different preservation processes going on at the same time as well, because sometimes that's needed to make it more shelf stable. All right, fermentation. Now, when something's fermenting, what do we know that's going on there? What's growing? Good bacteria, right? We were just talking about this, bacteria, but there's a time and place when we want good bacteria versus bad bacteria. And what grows? What's one of the, outside of beer and wine, what's a really trending item right now that's fermented? Okay, bread, yeah, everybody's making bread. Kombucha, yep. And what else? Starts with a K. Yep, yogurt's a great one. Kefir also, this is a non-dairy product. Kimchi, yes. Okay, does anybody know how kimchi, what the process was with that at all? These were
Bury it.
burying it, yes, exactly. You will take this fresh cabbage with spices, aromatics, and bury it, all right, in a sealed container. Now, what else? What are we controlling right there? We're controlling temperature, right? Because we know that if you store something underground, it's going to be a little bit cooler than that outside temperature, okay? So again, there are control factors. Very important. So fermentation, extremely important right now with prebiotics, probiotics. We're all looking at what gut health can do, the gut-mind connection, how we're eating. Vinegar. We've been talking about vinegar. We've been talking about vinegar and qualities of vinegar, right? From the get-go. So some important things to notice. Does anybody know what is called the mother of the vinegar? Does anybody know what that is? I'm going to bring up a visual. Hopefully the internet works. This is going to be
If you can't pull it up, Chef, I can.
Oh, actually, my internet is working great. It's apparently just the site. So the mother, okay, is the good bacteria. It's what's living, okay? It's what helps the fermentation, because where does vinegar come from? How do we get vinegar? We know we have red wine vinegar, white wine vinegar, apple cider vinegar.
That's right. Somebody said it.
Oh, I didn't hear anything.
Fruit. It was the internet connection was.
Fruits.
Yeah.
Fruit, yeah. And what does fruit have in it? Sugar, exactly. Sugar is necessary for fermentation, right? The bacteria need to eat the sugar so they can create bubbles, okay, which transforms, whether it's a full-bodied wine, right? An actual wine, you can take wine, and if you add the mother of the vinegar, which is this, it's basically a little clump of bacteria that you will find. This is a good picture of it. That's oftentimes what it'll look like at the bottom of your jar of vinegar, okay? Now, when you get a distilled vinegar, it does not contain the mother, okay? The mother is what makes it have a higher quality in the sense of probiotics and prebiotics in it. Something similar to this will be the SCOBY, which is from, who was talking about, like yeast, yes. Kombucha, SCOBY. This is what this one looks like. As you can see, very similar, okay? They're starting at dis, which is basically just a bacteria that you put in to a concoction that has sugar in it so that the bacteria can eat the sugar, and then it starts to ferment, okay? And this is very similar to what happens with vinegar as well. If you take the mother and you add that to wine or to apple cider, you start the fermentation process, okay, naturally. And then you basically have to store it. And you want to store it in a dark place that's cool. Again, controlling these temperatures and these other environmental factors, all right? That's a lot of science right there that I threw at you, but, okay, remember what we always talk about, cooking is science. And when you start to realize that these processes, guess what? How do we have fermentation, and how has everybody been living? I mean, if we look at historically, they've uncovered urns from history, you know, generations, centuries beyond. Fermentation and preservation has been going on forever. Vinegar was happening naturally. Guess what? If we lived in somewhere, a really hot area, okay, hot and dry, and I harvest a bunch of fruit and vegetables, what am I going to do to it? How am I going to make it last? Think about this. With no technology, I'm talking about way back in the day, we've got no technology. Dry it. Yeah, so you're going to cut it open. You're going to lay it out in front of, underneath the sun, and you're going to put a netting of some sort on it, and you're going to have to let the sun naturally dry it. Sun-dried tomatoes, sun-dried red peppers. What about dried mango? How about dried fish?
That's what I was just gonna. When I lived in Malaysia, in downtown Kuala Lumpur, the stores, the food shops would have little fish out on newsprint on the sidewalks drying. It's very common to see that.
100%, chef. That's it. So let's just get a little visual here, okay? Here's some dried fish. Look, this is just holding up there, right? As you can see, that fish has been filleted, opened up. So we're increasing, again, surface area, right? Shortening the amount of time it's going to take to get that fish dry. And this has been going on since this is the reason why we're all here today, because of preservation methods. What if we were to take it back and say, hey, I'm in a frigid area, it's freezing, and we just caught a whale or just killed a bison? How are we going to store that? What are we going to do? Bury it. Yep, freeze it. We're going to have snow. We're going to say, hey, we're going to cut this up and we're going to store it, because preservation is based on the fact that you might have too much of a harvest and your tribe, your group of people cannot consume it all, and you need to save it for the winter when you don't have fresh produce. Preservation is to get you through the long months. It's to get you when you don't have it, when you have abundance of something and you cannot consume it all. So start thinking about that in the way of preservation goes, right? So we've got drying in hot climates. We've got freezing in cold climates, smoking, smokehouses, jams, sugar. Adding a bunch of sugar changes what can grow in it as well. It's inhospitable. A lot of fat and a lot of sugar takes away, it's not a good place for bacteria to live and thrive. Yeah, nomads, of course. How do you think people that were traveling around the world got from point A to point B if they didn't have any, how were they carrying food? They would dry some beef, drive some camel, any type of protein and take it along. Actually, there's a really, really old recipe that I'll send out to you guys later that starts from, you take meat and some dried berries and you make this very basic, basically like an energy bar from back in the day. It's like a protein laced with antioxidants, and that's how people got around, right? Because you're traveling for miles and there's not a grocery store that you can stop in and get your produce or your meat. You're on the road. So you needed food that was preserved to take with you. It's pretty impressive. Literally, the reason why we are all here today is because of preservation method. With preservation, we would not have survived the cold months without food. How are you going to grow if you don't have fresh vegetables, right? That's where kimchi, where sauerkraut, where pickling all comes into play, making jams. Yeah, Gregory, pemmican is it. You got it. I'll send, like I said, I'll be sending out an article with you guys with that information for the history of preservation, some cool stuff. So let's talk about what else. I guess you all were talking about how different cultures pickle different things, correct? Ferment different things.
And specific to the U.S. and different regions in the U.S. and what's common. Like here, pickled okra is huge. Watermelon rind pickles that you talked about a couple of weeks ago. Pig's feet, eggs. So people were contributing regarding sort of regional things.
Love it. Even fish sauce. Who's ever used fish sauce in any of their cooking? Asian cuisine, right? Really funky, pungent, delicious, adds many layers of umami. Does anybody know what fish sauce is? We can guess maybe it comes from fish, right? Old fish, okay. Well, it starts off as new fish. Anchovies specifically. So if you think about this, again, go back in time, right? You don't have freezer capabilities. Somebody goes out fishing. You get a bunch of fish. You're gutting them, cleaning them. You've got little scraps. You're selling the main fish somewhere. Maybe you're drying some of that. And all of this fish, these guts and everything kind of get packed in with a little bit of salt and it's left to ferment. And voila, all you have is this beautiful fermented, safe because of the salt quantity, all right, fermented product. Garum, G-A-R-U-M, is the original one that they can date back to, the most likely to that, from Roman and Greek times and cuisine. It is similar to soy sauce. It's different, right? Soy sauce, you're fermenting soybeans, which are non-animal based. But there is the process of salting it and letting it ferment and age. And then we've got fish sauce. So you can imagine if you amp up the fishy level of the soy sauce, you get something pretty close to it. It's absolutely fantastic as well. Excuse me. So tons of processes. And again, we can trace back these beautiful techniques and products that we have to age-old recipes that have been going around forever. And I guarantee that every single culture, cuisine has these little things. Miso. Miso is also a fermented product. Okay. Even thinking about dried noodles compared to fresh noodles, right? That's a form of preservation. Making a bunch and saving it for later. The beauty of preservation. What do we all think it means? When do we want to preserve our harvest? When do we think that happens? How is it related to seasonality? Yeah, exactly, right? Because if all those strawberries keep coming in and we can't do anything about it, We can't eat them fast enough. Yeah, when they're at their peak, exactly. You want to capture these at the peak of their flavor. When do we make tomato sauce? All right. End of summer, all the tomatoes are coming in, right? By the truckload. You have to preserve them. Otherwise, we would have a bunch of tomatoes rotting out in fields because we couldn't do anything with it. And we're changing their acid level, we're cooking them, and then we're canning it, which is removing all of that oxygen and adding pressure. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about this kind of overarching idea of preservation and how it relates to what we're doing? No? All right. Yeah, the sun-dried method is basically dehydration. It 100% is, Yvonne. The other cool thing about preservation is that you get to have a little reminder of the summer or that fresh flavor when you're outside of it, okay? So it's kind of the beauty of digging into the pantry and thinking, oh, let's pull out that rhubarb and think of summer, right? It's a way to a little bit, get excited for the next season. Because oftentimes we didn't live in a time where we could get tomatoes year round. So think about what a joy that would be, back then. You're like, oh, we've got some tomato sauce, amazing. Or some fresh jam that's not normally there, right? Before industrialization and massive agriculture went worldwide. So it's pretty phenomenal. Let's hop
Maybe.
into, yeah, Chef.
Okay, sorry, everyone froze. Seems like it's okay now.
Hopefully we're back. Okay. I'm seeing some comments in the chat. Is dehydrated meat safe to eat? So, Deonta, yes, it is. But again, it's all about controlling these environmental factors. If you dehydrate meat and it takes way too long to get to the dehydration level that's safe, no, there's a good chance that bacteria might be growing in there. That's why preservation methods are really important, to fully remove all of that moisture content. Because otherwise, having that moisture in there, bacteria will go. But people have been pickling, canning, and enjoying dehydrated meat for years. Think about what do we all have in our pantry? Cans of soup, right? That have meat in it, oftentimes. So we've got meat that's just, we think about it, that's just sitting in a can. Pretty crazy. Because nobody really thinks about eating old meat, 5-year-old meat. But there it is, sitting in a can, or 3 years later, dehydrated and sitting on your in your cupboard. It's pretty incredible. Do you have to increase the acid if there's meat in the pasta sauce? Not necessarily, Melinda, if you are properly canning. So let's get into this. So there's a difference. In CU222, you all made quick pickles, right? Take some cucumbers, mix it with a little bit of salt, let it sit, add some acid, and you're set. All right. The basic principle of making pickles, what do we need? We need acid, and what else? Spices.
Salt.
Spices help. Yep. Salt. Acid and salt are your basics, and sometimes a little bit of sugar helps too. Helps balance it. Okay. Spices add those extra flavors. And that's great, right? But until we take it to the next step of canning, we're not making a shelf-stable product. So if you make a jam and you don't properly go through the steps of canning or pickling, you need to be storing this in the refrigerator because you haven't removed all of the air and the oxygen which bacteria can thrive and grow in. Okay, so canning. Let's take a quick look. We have a video on it. So let me see if we can pull up the class page. I'm just going to fingers crossed and let's just see what happens, ladies and gents. So we can get some type of clarity on the assignments and what is expected of you all. I seem to have it, so let's do this. Oh, not slowing down now. Great. Well, let's see if we can do anything. So here we are. For this week, you need to pick 2 of the following. I know you all already talked about pickling the vegetables. So once you take the pickled vegetable, you can take it the next step and preserve it by making it shelf stable by canning it. And there is this video right here on canning. All right, so if you want to take it a step further and make these shelf stable, say you've got a bunch of okra coming in right now, because we know it's the season for that. Watch this video. You do have to get ball jars or mason jars, as they're called, which have that seal, a ring and another seal, because you need to form pressure. Okay, we all know the rule. If you find a jar or that has the top that's popped, we don't eat that, right? That's because bacteria's been growing in there and creating extra oxygen. They're releasing oxygen. Once that top is not sealed, you have not made it shelf stable. That's your telltale sign. Okay. So check out that video. Now, you do not need a canning set to execute this. What you do need, though, is if you don't have a wire rack that fits in the bottom of a pot, take some foil, make a coil out of that, put that on the bottom. Or take a towel, a kitchen towel, wrap that around the bottom and stick it there. The reason we put that, does anybody know why we need a barrier between the heat source and our jars that we're trying to can? What would be the point of having some space between those two? Anybody saying it in the chat? Chef? Does anybody know yet?
Direct heat can break the jar.
Exactly. You don't want to have direct contact with the heat source. All right. Not just that the heat could break the jar, right? Most likely it's going to be because of it's going to be too hot down there, right? They might jumble around a little bit as well, but mostly it's about keeping that space so you're not having direct contact with the product and the heat source. So you, like I said, you do not need a canning kit, but I can show you what a canning kit looks like.
Mary's saying Walmart has a silicone rack you can buy for under $5 that you can use to can with.
Hey, awesome. If you can get that, go for it. As you can see, a canning kit will generally have these tools, the tongs to remove. If all you have is metal tools, metal and glass and water get really slippery. You're going to want to take some rubber bands around your tongs so that you get a little rubber grip on there, and then you would put rubber bands on each of those tongs independently on the 2 sides, so that way you have some rubber there so it'll hold it and be more steady. Either get that silicone rack or make one. And then this is just a funnel to make things a little bit easier. So you don't necessarily need to buy this canning kit until you get really into canning and you're doing large scale batches of this, but otherwise you can execute it with just what you have at home, which is pretty awesome. So let's follow back to, shooters. Let's see if we can do that. To Robert's question, we've got those 8 ounces of, sugar, 8 ounces of strawberry, 1 teaspoon of pectin, and ½ ounce of lemon juice. So it should have done it. I'm not sure why that happened, but we'll take a look at the finished product and see if we can get any insight from that. Sometimes visuals help. But this is very simple and straightforward. This is a 2-day process. You're going to hull, right? To hull the strawberries. That means we need to take those green tops out. All right, quarter them, halve them, depending upon their size. You put them with sugar, it starts to macerate, right? Water starts to leach out of the strawberries and the sugar starts to break down, get nice and it dissolves. And we take that next step and we cook it down, all right? Remove that from the heat. We add a little pectin and acid, and cook it for a little bit longer. Excuse me, add the acid afterwards. And then you pour into that clean glass jar and seal. Now, a few tips if you're going for the canning. You want to make sure you have a nice clean towel to make sure you wipe clean the rim of the jar. Any little stickiness can stop you getting from a proper seal. All right, you need a proper seal on there to prevent anything extra bacteria getting in. So make sure you have a nice clean lid and rim, and you want to give a little head space. All right.
What if we can't find the pectin? What can we use?
I would suggest doing another recipe.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Because pectin, now here, I'll show you this. Pectin levels in fruit. Some fruits and vegetables have enough pectin in it that you do not need it. All right. Pectin is like the gelling agent. Sometimes people will add cornstarch. I personally do not like the end result of using cornstarch as a thickener in my jam. It makes it cloudy, and it's just not, doesn't give that beautiful, it'll be dull. It won't be as great as what pectin can do. So as you can see, we've got group 1, group 2, and group 3. These are 3 different types of vegetables and fruits that have enough pectin or not enough to make a jam. Okay, so as you can see, group 1, sour apples, blackberries, citrus skins, right? Orange marmalade. You just need to add sugar to that. You don't need to add pectin. Cranberries, right? So group 2, you might need a little bit of acid or a little pectin to make it set. Group 3, if you cannot find strawberries, by the way, we all know strawberry season, depending on where you are, maybe not great right now. So if you do not have strawberries readily available to you, you can substitute with any of the fruits that are in group 3. Why do I say that? Because strawberries are in group 3. They need both pectin and acid to set. So feel free to use any of these if necessary, if you cannot get your hands on strawberries to execute this recipe. Does anybody have any questions regarding that?
Melinda's asking if the recipe would be the same.
Yes, it should be a 1-to-1.
We got another question about best apples for you to use for dried apples. Is that personal preference, or is there one you would recommend over another?
Let's hop into that dried apples recipe. So a few things to note on this one. I know some people were talking about using a dehydrator, which is great, but that is not what this recipe and assignment is calling for. If it did, we would say to use a dehydrator, right? Why? Why can't we use a dehydrator? Well, guess what? Oftentimes you might be in a restaurant where you don't have a dehydrator. A high quality dehydrator can run $400 to $500 easily. If you're thinking about enough shells and the power of it, you might be in a really small kitchen. You don't have the counter space for a dehydrator. But what you do have is an oven that's going to be going all night, overnight, that's just cooling down, right? So oftentimes we used to do dehydrated tomatoes in the oven. Once the shift is over, right? You throw those tomatoes in, they've been halved, they're sitting on racks, throw them in the oven. The residual heat overnight from the oven slowly dehydrates those, okay? So you're not consuming any extra energy and you're using an oven. Or alternatively, you turn this oven on, right? Very low, your lowest setting, 150 to 170. This is an extremely simple and straightforward recipe. How do we want to slice these apples? This is important. What happens if I were to slice an apple and I made wedges? Let's see.
Uneven cooking.
Uneven cooking, exactly, Robert. We do not want a large end and a small end, okay? This end will never dehydrate until, well, it will, this side will be burned, all right? Be so crisp, it'll discolor. And you're really just never gonna get this side done, okay? So thin, even slices, so you get nice, even, uniform dehydration. That lemon juice that you're using, why do we put lemon juice or acid into apples or potatoes? What does that help?
Stops it from turning.
Boom, exactly. We don't want these apples to discolor, right? We don't want brown spotches on them. We want to preserve that as much as possible, all right? So either use a nice sharp knife or use mandolin, get these nice even slices out of them, all right? Damp, blot dry those apples and throw that into a rack. They're gonna go from about 4 to 5, 8 hours. Now, a few things to note. If you live in a really humid area right now, it's humid in a lot of places. Think twice about doing if you're gonna do dried apples, because you've got a lot of moisture in the air. So unless you're using AC and you've already kind of started to control your environment, you've got a lot of humidity in there. Okay, so think about your controlled environment. What do you have control over? If we leave potato chips overnight in a bag and it's kind of humid, those things are going to totally be shot by the next day. And that's based on humidity. So think twice. So, and when it comes to the type of apple, honestly, depends upon what you want. Do you want a super acidic one? Do you want a little sweeter one? That's going to be your make or break for the dehydrated apples. You can core. It's not required. Some students in the past have done it. So if we have an apple, hold on, let's see. Cool. This is what I want to show you all. Different ways of cutting this so you get a different yield, different product. So you can always go vertical, right? And when you slice it thin enough, those seeds are just going to pop out. You could core that. You could have it, take a little core and do it. But alternatively, if you slice it horizontally, you get these beautiful little stars in your presentation, all right? Super cool, and those seeds just fall right out. And you're slicing it thin enough that that little tough part is not that annoying. It's gonna dry and crisp up and should be snappy, all right? You also wanna make sure that you fully cool those before storing, as always, so that they don't get soft, all right? Does anybody have any questions regarding the dried apples? Yeah, Roger, I see your hand up. What's up?
So in the recipe, it says it's optional to peel the apple.
Correct.
Is that dependent on the apple type or just the texture that you want, or?
It's really about that texture you want and presentation. The peel is not going to inhibit any type of dehydrating, right? It's not going to change that. It's really just going to, if you've got a beautiful red delicious, you get that little thin trim around the edges that have the peel. Otherwise, you know, it could be, you could peel them and get rid of them.
So like if you have multicolored, you could use different apples that are different colors and actually make a very nice presentation of it.
You got it.
Okay, gotcha.
Got it.
Okay.
I mean, think about how cool a slice of an apple, thinly sliced apples. Maybe you've got a yellow, green, and a red, and you're serving that on an apple pie a la mode, and you've got these little, you know, halved or starred dehydrated apple chips on there, right? Yeah. Could be used in a cocktail, right? We've seen those. I don't know if you guys seen this, but people are dehydrating blood oranges and getting this really beautiful crisp garnish and floating them in drinks. It's pretty awesome, and it takes a while for them to rehydrate just because they've been sucked dry, and so they stay pretty firm and really gorgeous and rigid in a presentation. So pretty cool. Have your go at whether peeling it or not. I would say keep it because it has skins of all your fruits and vegetables have more nutrients. So you'd be just, you know, wasting that. But it's all about what you want in your end result. All right. Let's see. All right. So we did those pickles, right? We did the strawberry preserves. We've done dried apples. Let's hop into sauerkraut. Sauerkraut, a fan favorite, right? Oh, Roger, that's uncalled for. You love German food. That's what German food is based on, sauerkraut. Come on.
I don't know. I've never had the taste for
Well,
sauerkraut.
you're
I
not
don't
going to be
know.
able to open a Gasthaus if you don't like sauerkraut and have some
Now,
sauerkraut.
now I'm going to be making it for this recipe. I am going to be making it because
Okay.
again, I have found so many times it's the way it's prepared, like
All
we
right.
talked about.
Well, fingers
So I
crossed.
am going to make it, and I am going to try it.
All right.
I
Perfect.
will push my boundaries.
Okay. Then that's all we need. So let's hop into sauerkraut. Sauerkraut is about that fermentation process. So this sauerkraut may take 3 to 5 days, depending upon the location and environmental factors that you're storing it in. So let me pop open your sauerkraut recipe and get this going. So it seems a little bit complicated, but it's actually extremely simple. First, remember, you do not need to make it. If you want to half this recipe, please do. If the 2 each cabbage heads, we know cabbage heads can literally range from 12 inches wide to 6 for diameter, right? Get something that's appropriate. And then you really want to, in this case, you are going to pull those external leaves, and you can core that, all right? It's not necessarily required, but you can core that. And what you're going to do is really finely slice. So part of this is how thinly you're going to slice it. If you have a mandolin, use it. Otherwise, work on those knife skills and get that nice, thinly, almost shaved like cabbage, right? Take that cabbage, right? Once you've weighed it, cored it, taken all the waste product out, you weigh that, all right? You divide it by 40. And that's going to be the amount of salt that you need. Okay, because it's based on a ratio. Then you can massage or just mix them gently. Either way, if you massage it, it's just going to break down those cells a little bit more. If you just toss it with the salt, that's fine as well. The process will still happen. And you're going to pack that into your containers. Non-reactive. What does that mean? What does a non-reactive container mean? Anybody know? Glass is non-reactive. Yeah, exactly. Some metals are reactive, right? So you could easily ruin a bowl or a pot, and it could ruin your product as well, right? So you don't want to do that. So then you want to store this in, all right? Popping this back up. Store it, and well, there we go. We're back in. Pack it, put a piece of plastic on top, and put a weight on top. The weight helps push and apply pressure so that the cabbage is constantly submerged. And it's gonna start to release water because the salt is drawing water out. All right, that's what happens, okay? Then the next important thing is the correct temperature. For some of you all, sauerkraut might not be a great option. It's been hitting the hundreds in a lot of people's homes, and 2 things you risk. It could ferment too quickly. If it's hot and not being a great location for it, you want it cool and dark, and this will slowly start to ferment, okay? And you'll start to see that change happen. 60 degrees though, that's not storing it in the fridge, right? If you store this in your fridge, that's not going to be the right temperature to get this end result, okay? You want it to be fairly moderate, right? I mean, if it's up a little bit more than 60 degrees, that's okay, but I wouldn't go too hot. You're just going to end up spoiling the cabbage. So it will take a few days. I know there was a comment in there saying it took too long. You weren't getting any action. Who was talking about that?
I think it was Mary.
Mary, where are you storing it, Mary?
I currently have it in a pickling crock in my basement, which is about 65 degrees or so. It just isn't fermenting fast enough. It's still crispy a week later. So I'm not sure. I increased the brine mixture a little bit to increase a little bit of the salt ratio, but apparently I'm still struggling with getting it to ferment fast enough.
Okay, so it could be, these are the technicalities of where this recipe can get thrown off, which is if you have too much salt, salt will stop that fermentation process. It's just not gonna, it'll take a
Nope,
long,
I definitely didn't have too much salt. If anything, it was undersalted, which is why I increased the based on a bunch of the other things I was able to read along the way.
yeah, huh, okay. Well, I would say just keep on giving it time, and you can still take those photos and evaluate how it is by the time you want to submit, and let's see. I've had, I think, like 2 students in the past that were not able to get it to ferment even, and they had started the process about a week ahead of time. And we figured that in her situation, it was a mismeasurement of the salt. So it could be that, it could just be that it's taking a little bit longer to ferment. And you might be getting, how thickly sliced was your cabbage?
I did it fairly thin. So I'm not 100% sure if it was too thick. So because I'm on vacation right now, when I get back on Friday, I'm going to check it again. My picture, and he said it was still crunchy. So I said, give it a quick stir, reweight it, put it back in, and I'll check it again on Friday and see where I'm at. Because maybe it's just a little too cool in my base. I don't know.
Exactly. It could just be a little too cool, and maybe the cabbage is a little thick and it's just taking a little bit longer. I wouldn't worry about it too much. Hopefully it'll all turn out.
Question though for you.
Yeah.
Late season cabbage, early season cabbage, and the sugar quantity versus. So I know right now it's a little later in the season, so they're not as sweet.
Correct.
I know that'll slow the process. So I'm thinking maybe that was part of the problem. Maybe it's burning up the sugar too fast.
I mean, it could be. Young, tender cabbage. It's very tender. It is sweeter. And that's generally when, countries that make sauerkraut will do it young and old. So they both will turn. I would say let's just see what happens on Friday and check it out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally. But this is great that you brought this up. Know that sometimes things don't go exactly the right way, and there's something that's obviously inhibiting the fermentation process. So it doesn't mean that anything's wrong. It just means let's see how long it takes. All right, because it'll eventually turn. And sometimes it won't, but hopefully it will, and you'll get a good end result there. The important thing is once you start fermenting is to seal it. Take all the bad little discolored cabbage from on top, seal it and put it in the fridge so that it doesn't continue to ferment. And that'll be that, because your fridge is generally kept at quite a low temperature. Chef Lee.
Yeah, we have a question. The video, cucumbers are sliced. The recipe says to leave them whole. It's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other with that, right?
100%. You can also, let me pull up that pickle recipe. You can use any, I didn't think that there was a pickled, there's a canning recipe. I didn't think that there was a pickled vegetable video. But maybe there is. Let me just pull this recipe up. For your recipe, you do have the option to use any type of vegetable. All right, so it doesn't have to be cucumbers. It could be carrots. It could be beets. It could be onion. It could be that okra. All right.
So they can be sliced or cut into spears or left whole. If it's like a mini cucumber, that would be okay to leave whole.
100%. Think about this basically. It's your surface area. Again, the infamous surface area that I'm always talking about. If you take a whole cucumber and put it in with no cuts on it, it's going to take a long time for that pickling liquid to penetrate because it's sealed off. Now, once I slice it, it's got one side where it can get some action. If I were to quarter it, now I've just increased that surface area that's in contact with the vinegar and the pickling solution. It's going to start to break down quicker. Okay, if you wanted to pickle peppers, you want to make sure that you're taking a paring knife and slicing a little a thin slice in it so that vinegar can get in there, and then they are not floating on top and they're submerged in the liquid, right? The key here is you want to make sure that your vegetables are fully submerged, all right? Otherwise, you're going to have tops that aren't pickling and the bottoms that are. So think about when you're slicing, what fits into the jar, how does it fit? Those are kind of going to be your bigger factors. But have fun. Also, depending upon which vinegars you use, it's going to have a different flavor. Distilled white vinegar can be pretty aggressive, right? It can be kind of harsh. But some people love that, right, for their pickle. You are adding sugar, so it's going to help mellow that out a little bit. And then, of course, you've got your salt and your pickling spices. Now, pickling spices. If you at your store doesn't sell pickling spices, you can just create your own pickling spices flavor. Throw in a few cloves, throw in one whole clove of garlic, throw in a fresh piece of dill if you were making kosher dill pickles. Put in some chili flakes if you want to get a little spicy, right? There are ways to create your own pickling spice. It doesn't necessarily have to be the pre-purchased, blend of that, okay? And let's see what else with that one. Oh yeah, just the canning section. Basically, cover and refrigerate at least 24 hours. Sorry. Sorry, class. Got a little dog interruption there. So the important things here about pickles. Why are we talking about waiting at least 24 hours before serving?
There we go. Flavor.
Flavor. Yes, right. We need the pickles to start to absorb the brine, right? Also, who's ever walked into a really good deli, all right? A deli, and you see the big barrel, and you see, and even at like Jimmy John's, they have it, I think, new pickles and old pickles, right? You got the two barrels, you got new pickles and old pickles. What's the difference that you see between those new pickles and the old pickles? The color, yes, Bendelin, exactly. Old pickles have turned army green, okay? They're not as crisp. Young pickles are still gonna be bright green, still have their crispness. So that exactly the crunch, right? So the longer a pickle sits in acid and salt, the softer it's gonna become, right? Because acid and salt will denature, will break down the fibers in the vegetables. Right? If you've ever, right, let's talk about those pickles. You get that beautiful mix of like cauliflower and carrot, maybe some green bean and peppers in there, right? Depending on how long they've been sitting around, they might be softer or crunchier if you've got a new batch. And that's all about new versus old pickles, all right? Because pickles take time to mature, right? And not to mention, there is a peak. Who's ever seen a jar of pickles on sale at a grocery store? Right? Those are usually they're pretty close to their expiration date. Yeah, I've actually purchased them, Latasha, because I thought, you know what, let's just see. Like, it's a good deal. It was barbecue season. All right, they're on sale. And I realized, wow, that crunch had really deteriorated. There was barely any crunch or structure left in that veg. So even though preserved foods, canned foods can last a very long time and still be safe and edible to eat, they do pass a peakness of their prime flavor and texture. So something to be thinking about. So does anybody have any questions regarding pickling or dehydrating or making sauerkraut or making preserves? Latasha.
Hi, Chef. I have a question. I know that you was talking about the heat and how it's going to affect with the apples, with the dehydration. I'm in Milwaukee, and we got this up and down kind of weather. So for the last couple of days, it's been extremely hot. Can you suggest another fruit that I can probably do?
Yeah, I mean, it's more about the humidity for the apples. Like if you're living in a humid area and you're not using air conditioning, your environment is just going to be wetter. I would suggest doing the preserves
Okay.
and the sauerkraut, or the preserves and the pickle.
Okay. Thank you, Chef.
Yeah, you're very welcome. After hydrating apples, sorry, Yvonne, what's your question?
She's asking if you can, if they're preserved after they're.
Oh, do you can them after? No, you want it, they're just dehydrated. So you don't want to add, all you would have to do is just put them in a tightly sealed jar container once you have your dehydrated apples, Yvonne.
And to present these for the assignment, Chef, I don't know if it says, I'm guessing it says in the photo requirements, but they don't have to be served with anything. It can just be the dried apples. There was a question about that.
Let me just pull up the photo requirements. You do not have to serve any of these with anything. They are there on their own. But if you want to, of course, there's always, you know, that option of saying, hey, maybe you want to serve those dried apples on, you know, some ice cream or an apple, you know, a dessert. Maybe you want to serve your pickles with a meal, right? Here are your photo requirements. This week we do want to see that plant. You'll have one more week of showing that plant progress in week 12. Sanitation bucket, mise en place, self-ID, standard, right? And then really we just want to see things labeled and dated, because of when we pickle something, it's really important that, again, if we're working in a restaurant, that we are labeling and dating everything so that we're using back to FIFO, right? First in, first out. You want to just process through. You don't want to not label something and then use something that's too new, and then you're left with old product. So as long as we've got, you know, that fruit, finished dried fruit for the apples, you're good to go. Your sauerkraut, everything, you're pretty much set. Roger, I see your hand up.
Sorry, couldn't get off mute fast enough. So for the pickling recipe, it says pickling spices.
Mm-hmm.
I looked up pickling spices in my grocery store, and it has Morton's canning and pickling salt. Is that what you're talking about, or is there something different?
Salt. Pickling spices are, Chef, are you, sorry, I didn't know if you.
Go,
Okay.
Chef, go.
Pickling spices are going to be in the spice section. Typically, they come in a little metal can or in a jar, like Chef is indicating here.
Okay. Okay.
But you can totally make your own with mustard seeds and, you know, whatever, any kind of seeds, that juniper berries, peppercorns. You know, you can make your own flavor profile that will appeal to you.
I think I'm going to steal the one off of my German pickle jar.
There you go.
There you go. Yeah. Pickling salt is just, it's like a little bit stronger than kosher salt. So you don't need to necessarily buy pickling salt. You can use kosher salt as the recipe indicates. The pickling spices are specifically usually that blend, like a traditional pickling blend flavor, as Chef Lee was saying.
Yeah, I was just a little surprised when I did the search for it. It only brought up that salt.
You know what? It's because a lot of stores, they might not keep pickling spices unless it's during the season for retail space on the counter shops, or just, you know, people are not buying pickling spices. Who knows? With COVID and what's going on, we might, I know that way back a few months ago, mason jars were sold out, pickling spices were sold out. So be prepared for that. And if you can't find a mason jar or a ball jar, just plan on not canning and not making a totally shelf stable product, but still getting the technique down without the canning factor.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. All right, class. Well, if nobody has any other questions, oh, Tara's up.
This stuff, right?
Yes.
Pickling spice. Yep, that's going to be your pickling spices. That's what you're going to want to use. That's your blend that you'll add to your brine.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. Well, thank you all for bearing with the technology issues. Again, I wish I had a better answer or, you know, solution to that. Thank you all for bearing with us. If you have questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. Love all of your enthusiasm and your continued improvements that I see every week with mise en place and your narratives that are constantly improving, the observations that you're making. You've all really just stepped it up over these past 2 months. So keep pushing. This is the final stretch. We've got week 9, 10, 11, and 12. Remember that 11, 12 is going to jump up and crush on us. If you're missing any assignment, please do reach out as soon as possible to either Chef Lee or myself, so we can get you, you know, if you miss something, get that in. We don't want to wait till the 11th hour. Adds too much stress. So other than that, please reach out if you have any questions. Keep up the fantastic work, and we will see you tomorrow with Chef Lee at the helm. Take care, everybody. Happy preservation. Bye.